She was calm, professional, focused. But the moment she rolled up her sleeve, the room shifted. Her tattoo became a magnet for whispers and smirks. No one asked why she had it, they just judged. Until a man who knew the story behind the ink and the pain beneath it stood up and said what no one else dared to. What they didn't know about her tattoo was everything. Before we dive into this powerful story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because stories like this one will change how you see people. All right, let's get into it. So picture this. Emily Rivera walks into her new assignment, and she's not some rookie fresh out of training. This woman has seen things. She's a military nurse who's worked trauma rotations that would make most people quit medicine altogether. She's been deployed in conflict zones where the difference between life and death comes down to seconds and steady hands. Emily's the kind of person who doesn't need to tell you she's tough. You just know it by watching her work. Quiet confidence. You know, she shows up, does her job, goes home. No drama, no showing off. But here's the thing about military bases. They're like high schools with bigger consequences. Everyone's watching the new person, sizing them up, trying to figure out where they fit in the pecking order. And Emily had something that made people look twice. A tattoo on her arm. Nothing crazy or colorful, just simple black ink. Angel wings wrapped around a set of dog tags, with a name and a date underneath. Clean, professional, but definitely noticeable when she rolled up her sleeves. Now, look, tattoos in the military aren't exactly rare. Half the people on base probably had ink somewhere. But there's something about visible tattoos that still gets people talking, especially when it's on a woman. Fair or not, that's just how it is. Emily knew people were looking. She'd catch the glances, hear the whispered comments when she walked by, but she'd dealt with judgment before. In her line of work, you develop thick skin pretty quickly. What she didn't expect was how much those looks would start to weigh on her. Her first week on base, Emily's trying to settle in, learn the routines, figure out who's who. During orientation, she's sitting in this conference room with about 20 other medical personnel, listening to some colonel drone on about protocols and procedures. She's taking notes, being professional, when she realizes the guy next to her keeps glancing at her arm. Not subtle glances either, like full head turns to stare at her tattoo. Finally, during a break, this tech leans over and goes, "So, regret that ink yet?" And he's got this smirk like he thinks he's being clever. Emily just looks at him and says, "Nope." Doesn't elaborate, doesn't get defensive, just goes back to her notes. But the guy's not done. He nudges his buddy and whispers something, and they both start chuckling. Emily pretends not to notice, but inside, she's thinking, "Here we go again." Over the next few days, it becomes clear that her tattoo is like this topic of conversation. People aren't being outright hostile, but there's this subtle distance. Conversations get cut short when she joins a group. People avoid making eye contact. And here's where it gets really frustrating. Emily's qualifications are solid. She's got more trauma experience than most of the people on base. But when a simulation lead position opens up, something she's more than qualified for, she gets passed over. When she asks about it, her supervisor gives her this vague answer about looking for a more neutral presence on the team. Neutral presence. Emily knows exactly what that means, and it has nothing to do with her medical skills. But she doesn't make a scene, doesn't file a complaint. She just keeps her head down and does her job, because sometimes fighting every battle isn't worth the war. A couple weeks in, Emily's grabbing coffee in the break room when she overhears this conversation at the next table. Two officers talking, and one of them says, "That new nurse, she doesn't look like military material to me." Emily freezes. She's standing there with her back to them, stirring her coffee, and she hears the other one reply, "Yeah, too much personal expression. Makes you wonder about her judgment." They're talking about her like she's not even there, like she's some kind of problem that needs to be solved. Emily takes her coffee and walks out without saying a word. But inside, she's furious and hurt, because she's given everything to this job, to serving her country, and these people are judging her based on ink on her skin. But the real breaking point comes during a unit-wide training session. Everyone's gathered in this big auditorium, going through emergency response scenarios. Emily's participating, answering questions, being engaged. She knows this stuff inside and out. Then, during a break, this officer, a guy she barely knows, decides to be the comedian of the room. He stands up and announces, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Hey, careful around Rivera there. She might memorialize us next with another tattoo." The room erupts in laughter. Not everyone, some people look uncomfortable, but enough people that Emily feels like everyone's eyes are on her. Everyone's laughing at her expense. She's standing there, and for a moment, she just freezes. Her throat gets tight. Her hands start shaking slightly. All these eyes on her, all this laughter, and she realizes that no matter what she does, no matter how good she is at her job, this is how they see her. So she does the only thing she can do in that moment. She walks out. Quietly, professionally, but she walks out. She goes outside and just stands there, breathing hard, staring at her arm. And, for the first time since she got this tattoo, she actually considers covering it up, maybe getting it removed, maybe just giving in to what everyone seems to want. What Emily doesn't know is that someone in that room saw everything, and that someone is about to change the entire situation. So while Emily's outside having her moment, back in the auditorium, the laughter dies down, and everyone's getting ready to move on to the next part of training. But then this figure slowly stands up in the back of the room. Colonel James Walker, the commanding officer for medical operations. This guy's been in the military for over 30 years, seen combat, earned more commendations than most people have promotions. When he speaks, people listen. The room gets quiet because everyone recognizes him, but also because there's something in his posture that says this isn't going to be casual. He doesn't raise his voice, doesn't need to. He just looks around the room and asks very calmly, "Do any of you know who that tattoo is for?" Dead silence. The guy who made the joke shifts uncomfortably in his seat. Someone in the back mumbles, "Didn't think it was a big deal, sir." Colonel Walker stares at him for a long moment. Then he starts talking. That name on her arm is Sergeant Luis Rivera, her brother. He was killed in action during a hostage rescue mission 3 years ago. You could hear a pin drop in that room. I was there, the colonel continues. I held his hand while he bled out on that dusty floor in Afghanistan. He used his body to shield 2 other soldiers from enemy fire. Your tattoo jokes? You're mocking a man who died saving lives. People are starting to look at their shoes. The guy who made the joke looks like he wants to disappear into his chair. But Colonel Walker's not done. And the reason Nurse Rivera is here, on this base, is because I personally requested her transfer. Not because of her last name, not out of some sense of obligation, but because she's the best field medic I've seen in 20 years of service. He pauses, looks around the room one more time. She's saved more lives in combat zones than most of you will see in your entire careers. So maybe, before you judge someone based on how they choose to honor their fallen family, you should ask yourself what you've sacrificed for the people sitting next to you. The silence that follows is deafening. And when Colonel Walker sits back down, nobody's laughing anymore. The change isn't immediate and dramatic like in the movies. It's more subtle, but Emily notices it right away. People start making eye contact again. Not the uncomfortable staring at her tattoo, but actual professional eye contact. When she walks into a room, conversations don't stop. When she offers input during meetings, people actually listen. The guy who made the joke approaches her a few days later. He doesn't grovel or make a big scene, just quietly says, "I was out of line. I'm sorry." Emily nods and accepts it, because that's who she is. But the real test comes a few weeks later during a mass casualty simulation. It's one of those big training exercises where they simulate a major incident, multiple injuries, chaos, time pressure, the works. Emily gets assigned to lead the triage team. Now, triage is basically the art of medical priority. Who gets treated first? Who can wait? Who's beyond saving? It requires incredible judgment under pressure. And frankly, a lot of people can't handle it. But Emily, she's in her element. She's moving through the simulated casualties, making split-second decisions, coordinating with other teams, managing resources. She's calm, efficient, and absolutely brilliant at it. Her team follows her lead without question. Other teams start deferring to her judgment. Even the senior officers running the simulation are impressed by how smoothly everything runs under her coordination. When it's over, during the debrief, something unprecedented happens. The room gives her a standing ovation, not because someone told them to, but because they genuinely respect what they just witnessed. Colonel Walker is sitting in the back, and he gives her this subtle nod. No big speech, no ceremony, just a nod that says everything. A few months later, at the annual commendation ceremony, Emily receives an award for outstanding leadership and performance. As she stands at the podium to accept it, her tattoo is clearly visible. And nobody looks away. Not anymore. The same ink that had drawn whispers and judgment now draws respect. Fast forward a few more months. Emily's become one of the most respected medical personnel on base. People seek out her opinion, request to work with her team, and the stories about her expertise are becoming legendary. The military decides to do a training video for new recruits, and they ask Emily to participate. She's sitting in front of the camera, talking about professionalism and service, when the interviewer asks about her tattoo. Emily smiles, not defensive or uncomfortable, just proud. "It's for my brother, Luis. He was the bravest person I ever knew. Selfless, dedicated, gave everything for his fellow soldiers. I wear this so I never forget what real sacrifice looks like." She pauses for a moment, looking directly into the camera. "But I also wear it for every service member who doesn't get to tell their story, who gave everything and deserves to be remembered." After the filming, a young nurse approaches her. She's got a burn scar on her hand and mentions how people sometimes stare, how she's thought about trying to cover it up. Emily looks her in the eye and says, "Let them stare. Just make sure you're doing something worth noticing." A few weeks later, Colonel Walker retires. At his farewell ceremony, he's asked about his proudest achievements during his tenure. In his speech, he mentions several people who exemplified the best of military service. The first name on his list? Emily Rivera. "Some leaders have to raise their voices to get attention," he says. "The best ones don't have to say a word. Their actions speak for them." In the official photo from his retirement ceremony, Emily stands beside him, tattoo visible, shoulders back, head high. Not because she's proven anything to anyone else, but because she never forgot who she was or why she was there. You know what the most powerful part of this story is? It's not about tattoos or judgment or even standing up to bullies. It's about how we see people. Emily Rivera never changed who she was. She didn't cover up her tattoo, didn't tone down her personality, didn't try to fit into someone else's idea of what she should be. She just kept being excellent at what she did until people had no choice but to recognize it. And Colonel Walker? He didn't give some big speech about tolerance or acceptance. He just told the truth. Sometimes, that's all it takes. The tattoo that people mocked was honoring a hero. The woman they dismissed as not military material was saving lives while they were making jokes. The regrettable ink they whispered about represented more sacrifice and service than most of them would ever understand. But here's the thing. We all make these snap judgments. We see someone and think we know their story based on how they look, what they wear, how they present themselves. And usually, we're wrong. If this story made you think differently about judging people, hit that like button and subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because the world needs more Colonel Walker's people who speak up when they see injustice, and more Emily Rivera's people who stay true to themselves no matter what. Sometimes the loudest thing in a room isn't a voice. It's the silence that follows truth. And sometimes respect isn't won with words, it's earned by what you carry, even when others can't see it. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.